Hi, I'm Professor Kim Kattari, and I received my doctorate in ethnomusicology, and I teach in the Department of Performance Studies. And I'm mostly interested in popular music and subcultural communities, communities that people identify with and participate in um, to some extent. So, for instance, a lot of the subcultural communities I study are oriented around musical styles. So, like punk or heavy metal or the rockabilly revival or EDM, electronic dance music. And I also study subcultures that don't necessarily orient around a type of music, but music plays a part in those communities, like Burning Man and the local regional communities that live a quote unquote burner lifestyle. So, because of my interests, I teach classes, a variety of classes, things like history of rock, where we talk about the development of popular music. I also teach a few seminars that have to do with different types of identity, the performance of identity, like the construction and performance of a Southern identity, for instance, which is a big part of the rockabilly music that I study. Um, or the history of altered states of consciousness and how that ties into different types of performative behaviors. And I also teach world music classes. And ultimately, it comes down to the fact that I'm really interested in the types of music that people listen to and why they listen to them, and how that represents part of their identity and expresses the things they value. I think I got into that because I myself grew up around a lot of different types of music. I grew up listening to um, a lot of music from all around the world. We had a lot of exchange students when I was growing up, and I went to a lot of concerts that were for diverse, lots of diverse types of music. And I also played piano. And so I went to college and I was pursuing a double degree in ethnic studies and anthropology. Because again, I think I'm always just been interested in different communities and the ways that people express their identities. And here is the power and value of taking electives. I took an elective that counted for my majors, but wasn't part of those programs. It was from the music department, and it was called the Music of Mexico and the Caribbean. And it just sparked my interest. We played some music, we learned about different types of music, and I loved it. And I loved it so much that after I graduated with my degrees in ethnic studies and anthropology, I just looked for programs in this field I had discovered through an elective called ethnomusicology. And I went on to get my master's and my PhD in it. I studied reggaeton and how that expressed people's identities. And then I went on to study a type of music called psychobilly, which is sort of a combination of rockabilly and punk and with horror. So you can imagine uh, songs like "Running from Gargoyles Over Copenhagen," or kind of campy, silly songs about like killing the cheerleader, or it's all meant to be sort of tongue-in-cheek, silly, campy horror, played sort of like Elvis meets the Sex Pistols, sort of. So that's what I ended up writing a book about. And I'm really interested in these, the ways that people like participate in a group, in a sort of underground group, an underground community of others that really like the same style of music, that express themselves through the way they dress. It even kind of affects the jobs they have, the people they hang out with, the cars they drive. It really affects all parts of their experience and identity. And I think that's appealed to me because I myself uh, always sort of resonated with subcultures. I went through my heavy metal phase, my grunge phase, my punk phase, and I call them phases, but they're all actually part of my identity. They never really go away. I just start to express myself in different ways. So I'm interested in those expressions of people's identity. And That's one thing I really like about being a part of the performance studies department, because in traditional ethnomusicology, you sort of focus very specifically on music, and that's definitely a big part of my research. But I kind of look at the big picture. I'm really interested in people, how people dress, what they say, what they do. The types of places they go, the types of communities they form, like Burning Man, for instance, being sort of a temporary new community that some people view as like a utopia. And so I'm interested in not just the music, but sort of everything that goes along with these communities that people participate in. And that's what I like about performance studies, is that it's a broad look at how we perform ourselves, sort of like the Shakespeare quote about all the world's a stage and we are merely its players. That's kind of the way I really identify with performance studies, as a way to really think about how everything we do is a performance, how we dress, what we say, how we go about our day, the choices we make, the people we hang out with. All of that is part of the performance of our lives. I'm also really interested in looking more deeply at certain types of performances to understand what they mean and what they express. An example that comes to mind recently is from the Super Bowl performance this year with J Lo and Shakira. And there was so much backlash online. There were opinions on many. There were many different types of viewpoints about how people interpreted that performance. Some people thought it was really anti-feminist because of the way that the female performers moved and what they did with their bodies and what they showed of their bodies. Whereas other people thought it was a really feminist performance because of the way it expressed their power and their strength and solidarity in women, among women. And a lot of the multiple viewpoints sometimes came from people not being very informed about the choices that those performers made. For instance, Shakira, often when there was a close up of her sort of wiggling her tongue at the camera, sort of, a lot of people interpreted that as a sexual gesture, and people were really offended by it and thought it was scandalous and pornographic. Whereas actually, there's a lot of meaning to the thing that she did that has roots both in her Colombian heritage and her Lebanese heritage as an expression of joy and celebration. A lot of the dance moves she performed, again, were interpreted by a lot of people as very scandalous and pornographic, yet had roots in her heritage and her ethnic traditions. So uh, one of the things I like to do in performance studies, and one of the things I like to teach, is to teach sort of the underlying meanings and contexts that go into these performances, so that we can better understand maybe what the performers were doing and what they had in mind, and use this information to make informed opinions and an informed analysis of that performance. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a taste of what we do, and what I do in performance studies, in terms of understanding the deeper layers of performance, understanding the meanings, by becoming informed and educated about the context from which those derive.